Hello and welcome everyone to day 4 of the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge with me, Sam Peterson. If you guys want to join these challenges, they are 2 weeks long, Monday through Friday, and you can join at behance.net/challenge/Photoshop. So I will show you where we are with that. If you go to the landing page here, you will see, let me see here. Yeah, you'll see the big blue button at the top. You can just click that to get registered. And if you scroll down a little ways, you'll see all the challenges so far. Today is the brushes challenge. So we're going to be playing around with different Photoshop brushes, having fun with that, and adding a painted effect to a portrait or photograph using brushes and filters. So if you want to see the replays for any of the ones that have already passed, you can just go to watch video. Otherwise, you can click get started here to get the starter file and join along. Hello everyone in the chat, Chad, Steve, Sean, Wade, Jennifer, Umacorn. Good to see everyone. Welcome on in. Also, I want to tell you about the Discord, of course, so you can check that out. We have a community Discord where you can post all your challenges and get feedback. You can ask questions. There's an ask a question section here under advice. The main section you'll be posting on is under feedback where it says challenge. We have a lot of awesome challenges going here. I was just looking through these. I love this one by Oleg. I don't know whether it's like more cute or more terrifying, but it's pretty great. I love the lighting in this one, it matches perfectly. There's some really awesome challenges that people are submitting, so definitely join, submit along with us, join us. We have mentors who are giving feedback. We got Ted B, Valdair, they're all giving feedback and advice, and you know, a lot of people are active in the Discord. So if you want to join, definitely feel free. Hello, I hope I didn't miss anyone. Jennifer, Dorina, good to see you. Michelle, Emily, Frank, General Kenobi. Good to see everybody. Welcome on in. So let's jump into the challenge, shall we? Today we're going to be doing some fun stuff with brushes and painterly effects. A lot of times if people are trying to get a certain traditional painted effect in Photoshop, they use like filters or there's certain techniques, but we're actually going to be combining a lot of them today. So I want to jump right into this so we have as much time as possible. But first, what I'm going to do is what we've been doing a lot on these challenges, which is cutting out our main subject and separating it from the background to give us a little bit more freedom. So what I want to do is I'm grabbing my quick selection tool and I'm actually just going to click select subject at the top here. It's a very clean background, so this should do a pretty good job. But what I want to do after is click select and mask to see how much it got it, and that's a really good selection. If I want to refine any hair or anything like that, I can do so by clicking the refine edge brush tool and just dragging it right along the outside of that hair. We've been doing this a lot. This is whenever you have complex edges, mostly with fur and hair, this is the tool to use. And I hope you guys don't hear that in the background. They decided the second I pressed the live button, some heavy power tools just went on outside, but hopefully my AI thing is doing a good job of cutting it out. Let me see. Yeah, I accidentally selected the head there a little bit, so I'm going to try that again. I want to keep that part of the head. Yeah, that's pretty good. For my purposes, this doesn't even matter, to be honest. We don't need a clean selection for here. You could have like a really sharp edge, but I just want to show you how to do that because it's something I find myself using all the time and it's very useful. So we cut that out, and now what I want to do is create a background. So I'm going to create a new layer, Control or Command Shift N to pop that up, and I can call this just background. You can also go up to layer, new layer here if you want to do it manually. I like to use hotkeys for any repeated actions. Definitely a good habit to get into. Sounds great. Awesome. Man, technology. It's just the best. That's like the coolest addition I think I've ever been able to use. Perfect for my needs. So let's drag this this layer below the portrait here. And I'm going to fill it in with, I don't know, just a color like this. One thing I notice is the hair bothers me. A lot of times when there's these complex selections with hair, sometimes it gets this kind of like really light edge. And again, for this purpose, it doesn't matter. But I like to show this because I think it's very useful to be able to take these options that Photoshop has with these like kind of AI driven tools, but you know, tweak it if you need to. So a lot of times what I do is I take a multiply layer and I kind of darken down those hairs just to match the rest of it. I'm just doing a really quick and dirty job of this. I can lower the opacity on my brush. It's a bit aggressive right now. Maybe something not so dark. But I like to manually clean up my edges sometimes. Again, for this one, not necessary, but I like to do that occasionally. So I'll leave that like that. Now, I created this background and we're going to be going for a painterly look. I'll get back to that in a moment, but first let's go in and edit this photo to prep it to be painterly, to look painterly. So I'm going to convert it to a smart object, right click the layer, convert to smart object. Just to be non-destructive, we're going to be doing some stuff to this. Let me move this out of my way here. All right, so first what I want to do is apply a camera raw filter. If you go up to filter at the top, you'll see camera raw filter. And there's a couple options within camera raw that I want to use specifically for this purpose. Let's just give it a minute to load. You'll see all these sections on the right. There's a lot of power and a lot of flexibility within camera raw. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. This has been covered a few times, but I only want a couple things from here. I want to go to basic and I want to play with texture and clarity. So let me see, can I zoom in here? Oh, there we go. So texture, I'm going to take down, and if I take it all the way down, you'll see it softens the image a bit. If I crank it all the way up, you'll see it really makes all those details sharp. So I want a softer look. If you look at oil paintings, typically they have a much softer look than photographs. So I'm going to get rid of a lot of those details, maybe like -74 or so. Clarity is the same thing. You can try clarity, cranking it up and pushing it down. It kind of softens some of those dark tones. So I'm not going to do it as much, but maybe like -25. I want to keep the contrast, but I want to soften it just a bit. Then we can go to detail and you'll see noise reduction, not nose reduction. Maybe that's a neural filter. Noise reduction is the only one I want here. If I crank that up all the way, you'll see how much it softens the skin's details. It's fairly subtle, but I'm going to crank it up more or less all the way. I'm going to put it at like 90. And we'll click, it's going to apply that, and I'll zoom in and show you the effect. So I'm going to save it. Whenever my computer starts loading a lot, I'm like, ooh, gotta save it. So there's the effect. It already softens it a bit. And if you're going for a traditional painted effect with this photograph, it's good to have a reference because you kind of want to have an idea of what an oil painting actually looks like. Or if you're doing like watercolor effect, you want to know what effects you're actually shooting for. So one more thing I want to do is maybe make a quick levels adjustment. I like to, let's see here. I like to fade the darks out a little bit here, just a touch, and I'm going to compensate by darkening the midtones. But in oil painting, a lot of times compared to photographs, the dark tones aren't going to be quite as dark as a photograph. If you see like a photograph printed on glossy paper next to an oil painting, the darks in the oil painting, if it's like black or really dark blue or something, they're going to appear really rich, but when you compare it with a photograph, it's usually not quite as deep. So I think that's a decent way to get kind of a painterly look. Just easing off the darks a little bit. So I think that's pretty good. Cranking this bottom slider up to about 13 for the darks. I just increase the darkness of the midtones a bit. I think that looks pretty good. So we can move on. The last thing I want to do is apply some filters. So if we go to filter here, there's two things we can do for an oil painted effect. One, you can go to up to filter gallery. And because this is smart object, we're going to be able to tweak all these things later if we want. These aren't permanent changes. The ones that I think are kind of good for an oil painted effect, you know, feel free to play around with these, have fun with them, especially if you're going for like watercolor or acrylic or something else. But let's see here. There's artistic and brush strokes. I think those are the ones we want. So dry brush has an interesting effect. I think paint daubs is a good one too. I kind of like, there's an angled strokes one down under brush strokes. And I like that in paint daubs quite a bit. I'm clicking back and forth between them. But I think angled strokes has a little bit more of the look that I want. So I'm going to click OK. And then lastly, of course, many of you maybe saw this coming, the oil paint filter. Now that's one you could just do on its own. Feel free to do as much of one or the other as you want. These are all just kind of applying different effects. So you can play with the sliders, stylization, try cranking these things all the way up and then all the way down. See how they work in conjunction with other settings. Cleanliness, try that. It all just has a slightly different stylization to it. Scale. So I kind of have it where I want. One thing that's very clear is the lighting. If you have that checked on, you can play with the angle of the lighting, how it interacts with the kind of faux brush strokes that Photoshop creates. But this shine, if you play with this shine, it's pretty much like texture, like the amount of texture that the light's hitting. I think having it next to nothing is the best effect for the look I'm going for. You can get a little bit more brush strokey texture if you crank it up more if you want that. Kind of am going for that softer look, so maybe like 0.2. And I think that looks pretty decent. So this is just a starting point. We just kind of prep this to be painterly, but with those smart filters turned on and off, you can see the effect the Camera Raw filter has, the filter gallery, and the oil paint. And right there kind of preps it for some good texture. Van Gogh style painting. Yeah, you want to have something in mind. And actually, it's good that you bring that up because I looked up a painting by Anthony Van Dyck, a painter who I really like. And, if you can gain some reference from this, that's really helpful. A lot of times you'll see soft edges, like this shoulder pad here. It's kind of this faded edge. A lot of times you'll see lost edges down in the darkness of these shadow areas. But I really like the background too, just that kind of textury background. So I'm going to use this as a reference. And the reason I bring that up is because you want to be actually pulling this from somewhere. You want to be mimicking an actual look. So I'm going to be trying to mimic a little bit of that Anthony Van Dyck painting. But before we get into the really painterly effect of this is kind of where brushes come in as part of this challenge. So let me show you what I mean by that. I want you guys just to have fun here, kind of go nuts. Create a background, create this on its own layer, and then just play with different brushes, different effects. Try to tone the background in a painterly way, whatever effect you're going for. I have that reference from the Van Dyck painting. And I just kind of want to play around like this for a bit. This is a brush that I have. I like this brush. I paint with it a lot. But it gives a nice texture, but you can try out a lot of things. I have this other one called Messy Brush. And, I see the Van Dyck painting has like little bits of yellow in it, little bits of warmth. And you can play around with your brush's opacity at the top. It's going to be a lot more aggressive if you have it near 100. So just keep that in mind. You can kind of control it exactly where you want. But I like the texture that this brush gives. Let's try something more than 35. I'll go to 46. It's a little bit more aggressive. And one thing that I want to keep in mind, this is kind of something I touched on previously, is consider where you want the most contrast to be. I want us to be drawn towards her face, which is very easy and clear because she has these warm tones on her face. The background is a cool tone, so it makes a very nice contrast. But this turtleneck that she's wearing, I don't want a lot of attention to be drawn there, and I could play with having some lost edges if I make the background around that same area pretty dark. So the more I make that area dark, the more our attention will be drawn to the face, and you can ease that off or crank it up as much as you want. You have control over how much contrast is in any given area. But I like the lost edges in a lot of oil paintings that I really appreciate. So that's something I'm keeping in mind. There's also there's so many brushes that Kyle T. Webster has made. If you have not played with them, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're doing like a acrylic or watercolor. There's some splatter brushes You know, I'm going more for a oil painted effect. So maybe I won't, you know, lean on those as heavily. But I think that's pretty good. I think we can go from there. Maybe I'll add a little bit more teal. Lower that opacity, it's at 100. Definitely don't want that. It's too aggressive. You can get a lot more like subtle, gradual fade. The lower opacity. All right, so let's move on to the mixer brush. But my point is have fun with this part. Go nuts with brushes. Try a lot of things out. What we're going to be doing next is trying out the mixer brush. So I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to output all these strokes to a new layer. Call it mixer. If you click and hold on your brush tool, you can select all the different ones within that category. So I'm going to click on mixer brush tool. Now use any brush you want. This is my main painting brush that I use. You can see what it does. It's a pretty aggressive effect potentially, but go up here at the top and make sure these settings are kind of like mine. So there's this left brush here that says load the brush after each stroke. I want that off. And if you have the clean the brush after each stroke, I have that checked on. So I found that that gives me the best results. You can play with those, but I feel like this is more of the natural kind of painterly look that I'm going for. You can do like presets for dry, light load, heavy load, moist. You know, it's different amounts of like wetness and blending. But I have mine at wet 15, load 15, mix 50, flow 50. I may tweak these up or down, primarily wet and load, just depending on how like dramatic I want the effect to be. And then I have sample all layers checked on here. So even if this is a new layer with nothing on it, it'll sample all these layers. And then I have this little thing checked here, which is always use pressure for size. So if that's, I believe for the tablets, if you're using a tablet at all. Now you can definitely do this with a mouse. If you have a larger brush size, you're going to get a more dramatic effect. If your brush size is a bit smaller, you're going to have a smaller, or you're going to have a more gradual effect. But what I've noticed about oil paintings that I really love by artists that I follow is I love how soft the hair is. So I like just softening edges. I think oil painting compared to photography, a big part of it is that softness. Now you want to make sure you do have hard edges. You don't want to go too crazy, but overall, all the edges are a little softer. This looks quite digital to me, this edge here. So what I want to do is just kind of have fun going over it vertically. Like I'm following the line here. I'm not doing this, which you can. You can kind of lose edges by doing this, you know, back and forth. And it kind of has a cool like wispy look to it. But what I want to do is just kind of go back and forth over that edge. I can even just wiggle it back and forth like this, you know, and it essentially blurs it a little bit, but it makes it look more like paint in my opinion. Like oil paint. So one thing I want to do is just go over all the edges and clean them up. But if you do make a mistake and it looks like that lighting shouldn't be here, this is on a new layer, so you can just erase it. So if you ever go too far or you do something too drastic, just erase it off. It's all kind of maintained on its own layer, so it gives you a lot of control. And I say going big is probably the best bet here. Like, don't be afraid to do some big brush strokes like this. You know, you kind of want to go with the form. Imagine that you're actually painting this. You kind of want to go with the form of the face. But don't be afraid of doing some like large, you know, large brush strokes that are very, very dramatic. I may just do it over the seam between the mouths so it just doesn't look so sharp. You know, you can purposely do some big brush strokes on the forehead just to like really allow those brush strokes to show. I may soften up the hair even more. The filters actually did a really good job of softening that hair. But I may go over this a bit more. You know, like I said, have fun with losing some edges. Sometimes I do one way, and then I do the other way. And it kind of just fades into the background seamlessly. If you look at paintings, you'll notice a lot of hard edges, soft edges, lost edges. There's a nice variety between edges. Oh, interesting. Arthur Gaines' work. I'm not familiar with him. Traditional oil painter. So let me see here. I think I want to probably do it with the eyes a bit, but you can really just go around as much or as little as you want. Just zoom out, look for any areas that look a little digital to you, a little like they could use some work, and put some accent marks here and there if you really want to sell that traditional painted effect. Like going out of your way to make you know, some brush strokey marks like this that don't look quite perfect, but and then if you went too far, just ease off of it with the eraser just a touch. So one thing I want to do, and I really want to go nuts with this, is the turtleneck. And keep in mind when you're doing this, you're also painting on the background. So we're kind of losing our separation between the layers. And this is why I wanted to do the background first. But I want to soften up all this. If you do upstrokes from the canvas, you'll get some weird colors, so try to avoid that. But I want to get some lost edges in this turtleneck. So I'm actually just pulling it out. You can see like that. And then doing it the other way, vertical. So you get some cool effects when you do that, and it kind of looks like the artist just, you know, purposely allowed those areas to fade, those lost edges. I usually like to do those in shadows, like around the neck here. Maybe we'll do that a bit. And one thing I really want to point out, we'll make a new layer here, and I'll just call it paint. Is don't be afraid to actually paint on this. You know what I mean? Like you can take a normal brush, and we'll get our painting brush that I've been using. Don't be afraid to get a normal brush and actually paint on top of this to add strokes. So maybe I want some like reflected light from the environment here. You know, you can just put brush strokes down in places that you think would be kind of neat. Add a little pop of color. All right. And then maybe we can make a new layer again. I like to keep my layers pretty separate. We can go back to our mixer brush and we can integrate those in. Same thing we did before where we kind of paint over it. But we're not just, you know, mimicking a painted look. At a certain point, you could actually paint on top of it and combine that with all the mixer brush work you did. I mean, you could paint on this like 50% of the thing and change it quite a bit if you want, and that's gonna probably sell the effect a bit more. So I'm actually gonna switch back to my brush and maybe add another little blue like on the jaw, like this reflected light. You know, maybe there's some reflected light bouncing. And then just kind of blend those in. Erase off if I went a little too far on it. But that's the goal. You can spend as long as you want on these. You can get some pretty cool effects. You know, I just go through it and try to fix up any area that I don't think has enough of that effect. And I think that's looking pretty decent. I would probably want to push the effect a bit more. I still think it looks a little too crisp, a little too digital for my purposes. So I would just keep working away on this. And of course, I'll post this on the Discord. You can also add a little bit of a texture on top of it. Set it to multiply, ease off the opacity a bit, you know, a canvas texture. I think that can look kind of cool. But yeah, that is pretty much it. So we kind of went from, let me see if I can do this real quick before we gotta go. We went from this to this. And again, if you really want to push that painterly effect, just make a bigger brush, do more brush strokes, really push that look. So that's the goal. If you guys want to join us, you can post in the Discord here. This is where we're going to be reviewing all the challenges. And I look forward to seeing your guys' paintings for these challenges. A lot of awesome stuff that I've been seeing. Really impressive work, everyone. I love this. Centaur, really cool lighting. We got some of the animal challenges being posted here. Here's like a rhino whale combination. This is perfect. Like the lighting on this is flawless. The blending, awesome job. We got a Pegasus. Some really impressive work. I've been loving the creature challenges. Like, come on, this is so good. The lighting and color matches so well. This is super cool. It's like a big fantasy scene here. Awesome job, everybody. Ooh, I love these ones too. You guys have been doing great with this. The faded contrast to really make this look like it's way off in the distance. Yeah, that's great. I love these ones with the length on them because you can even fade the background more than the foreground, which even adds to that effect more. So these are awesome. You guys have been killing it. So I'll go ahead and share my challenge in the Discord soon. And I look forward to seeing anyone who wants to post those. So join the challenges if you want. You can go to the landing page. You can get the Discord there. You can get the challenges there. And we will be back tomorrow for another challenge. So thanks for hanging out today, everyone. It was nice to see you, Stony, Steve, Wade, Valder, Umacorn. Thanks so much, everyone. I will see you all next time.